Oh boy, yeah, so now we are talking about Buffalo again. Because yesterday we made a video talking about Elliotte Friedman and his update in regards to the Elias Pettersson trade situation. He spoke out and said on Saturday headlines that the Buffalo Sabres are to be expected to being in this conversation. That was a terrible sentence. I'm trying to rephrase and remap that in my mind. Friedman spoke out about how even though Pettersson wasn't traded to Carolina, trade talks for him are still going, and Buffalo is right in the mix. So that is essentially what he had said on Saturday. But now, just like the same rumors we had seen with the Dylan Cousins and Detroit rumors, we have ourselves Buffalo insiders going out there and spreading some of the word. I wanted to direct your attention to Chad Dinaminisis on Twitter. He is, self-proclaimed, one of the top 5 dumbest Sabres fans. But of course, he does have his own shows in the Buffalo area about the Sabres, and he does have some interesting news to give us NHL fans about the Buffalo Sabres. As always, the show is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Go out there and check out the first link in the description if you want to go out there and get some free months on your VPN, save some money, and support the channel all in the process. But going over onto Chad Dinaminisis' Twitter, he posted an article on expectedbuffalo.com, and the tweet reads this: "The Buffalo Sabres are being mentioned as a realistic landing spot for Pettersson if he is moved. The good news is, I've been told that my concerns about the financial commitments of this deal are not a roadblock. Kevyn Adams has the green light internally to explore this deal." And if you click on the article and you try to read it, it's actually behind a paywall, so unless you have an expectedbuffalo.com subscription, you're not going to be able to read this article. But I'll leave a link in the description if you want to go out there and see it yourself, if you, just in case, do have an expectedbuffalo.com membership. But the Twitter conversation is indeed going, because now you have Buffalo folks talking specifically about Kevyn Adams and his ability to dive into this trade. And one of the replies I thought was super interesting. Look at this post made by Ryan Catanzaro. Outside of Elias Pettersson's career year 100-point season, aren't we looking at another guy who this organization will be banking on just to go back to the player he was 2 years ago? Don't we in Buffalo already have a full roster of them? And then Chad replies, Pettersson had 89 points last year. This year he's down, but everything going on around him is also going down too. So when you think about this, the Buffalo Sabres, I don't want to call out specifically, like, oh, they only have guys who are washed, like all their best players were better players 2 years ago. Like, that's kind of tongue-in-cheek to go out there and say. But ultimately, for Elias Pettersson, this is a really interesting update for Buffalo, because we always knew that one of the concerns about Pettersson was that dollar amount. And I think, for the most part, NHL teams would evaluate Pettersson as being quote-unquote worth the dollar amount, especially when you consider the amount of interest there seems to be on this guy and what teams are willing to pay. We keep on hammering this point down, but Carolina evaluated Pettersson higher than they evaluated Mikko Rantanen. And Rantanen is literally one of the best players in the league consistently every single year. Pettersson is not. He is one of the best players in the league when he is on his game, but he hasn't been on his game for a good chunk of the past calendar year. Pettersson, though, is a center. His cost is controlled because he's making $11.6 million till the end of 2032. Assuming he gets back to 100-point form, $11.6 million in 2028, in 2029, in 2030 is going to be really, really valuable, assuming he's able to sustain that level of production and actually be a top-tier first-line game-breaking superstar. Elias Pettersson can be worth the money. It's just, I think for a lot of Canucks fans looking at it right now, it's like, oh, he sucks. Like, the guy's not doing much. He's not scoring. He hasn't scored in a year. He's not really consistently doing anything. He can play Selke-level defensive hockey at times, but even that's not all too consistent. There are some nights where he is just okay. Like, Pettersson, I'd say, is never terrible defensively in the same way that JT Miller can be terrible defensively. Pettersson is just one of these players where you know what he is when he is at his best, and at his best, he is literally one of the best players in the damn league. With Buffalo being given the green light to explore Pettersson at $11.6 million, it does seem like they are one of these teams, like Carolina, that are evaluating Petey as that guy who is a 100-point caliber center and not a declining, overpaid, long-term asset. And realistically, there's no reason for other teams to go out there and think about Pettersson in that bad of a way as well. I know Canucks fans here, we watch him every game, we love seeing the lives of our Canucks guys and how the drama continuously builds up in this city, but Pettersson, obviously, is going to get better, right? I mean, this season he's on pace for 54 points. That would be the worst season of his damn career. Yeah, I know he had 21 points in 2020-2021, but he was injured for most of that season. He had 26 games. This season is the worst point production season Pettersson has ever had, and it's 2 years removed from being a 100-point caliber guy and somebody that made this contract of $11.6 million worth it in the eyes of 99.9% of Canucks fans. Buffalo still thinks of Pettersson in this way. Most likely, right? That's why they're given the go-ahead and the green light to go out there and check up and try to make this work. To headman this conversation a little bit more, I wanted to turn your attention to another article that will also be linked in the description. This was written and published by David Pagnotta on thefourthperiod.com yesterday, January 26, 2025. The Sabres remain active with trade calls. This, of course, is talking about that same Buffalo team, diving into some of the guys that they could be interested in moving and guys they could be interested in acquiring. Take a look at this. The Vancouver Canucks are one of the teams the Sabres have been engaged in trade conversations with going back to last month. Adams has been trying to acquire Elias Pettersson from the Canucks, and those discussions are reportedly back on, according to Friedman. During the Saturday headlines segment, okay, it's the same thing we had talked about earlier, I believe that one of the teams that has shown a lot of interest on Pettersson is Buffalo. There are others, but the Sabres are in there. It has been reported that the Canucks want Cozens and Byram in a package for Pettersson. The Canucks are also interested in power. So, with this in mind, yesterday we had talked about Byram and Cozens. What about Power and Cozens? You know, we did make a few videos already talking about Owen Power's name, floating it around as a potential option here for Vancouver. Ultimately, though, it's pick your poison, right? Bowen Byram is smaller than Owen Power. Bowen Byram is older than Owen Power. Power was a first overall pick. Power is a lot more raw. Bowen Byram's a Stanley Cup champion. But also, there is the question as to whether or not Byram is really on the path to progressing and developing to the best that he can be. I'd say for Power, that question is there as well, but there's more room for positivity considering the fact that he's younger. That's not to shade Bowen Byram, of course. I'm a big fan of his. He's from BC. He played for the Vancouver Giants. He was a menace there. It's just, Bowen Byram is not Rasmus Dahlin. Bowen Byram is not Kale McCarr. There were times throughout his career where you could say that he was supposed to be in that territory. I'd say he's like a shade below, not even in the Miro Heiskanen level just yet. But ultimately, if the Canucks are trying to go after a guy like Power, sure, Power's not there either, but he is younger. There's a lot of time for him to get in there, and quite frankly, he plays a much different game than Bowen Byram too. So if it's like Cozens and Power or Cozens and Byram, it seems like Kevyn Adams does have the ability to go out there and make a trade that does fit those circumstances. Now, if you think about salary, because the green light for the salary is also going to be thought about here too, Dylan Cozens is signed on until 2030, making $7.1 million. I don't necessarily know if he's the guy that the Canucks would use. He's on pace for 40 points this season, which is less than Pettersson, and Cozens, of course, has had a lower upper ceiling compared to Pettersson. Owen Power is also locked on for a long time as well. He is signed on till the end of 2031, making $8.35 million. So, lots of money going around with these Buffalo guys. Bowen Byram does not have that contract yet. He is not committed to long-term. His contract goes on till the end of this season, making $3 million. So, obviously, there is something that's going to have to give here. Ultimately, though, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about this entire conversation? The Buffalo Sabres and the Buffalo Beat have started to pick up on the Elias Pettersson trade talk, and now we're hearing that the Sabres and Kevyn Adams have been given that green light to go out there and pursue Petey. Thoughts in the comment section below. The articles will be linked as well if you want to read those yourself. Of course, if you had the membership, then you can go out there and read the Buffalo piece. But for now, thoughts in the comment section about the Canucks and the Sabres. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sign on, and bye.